The sun hung low over the vast Badlands, casting long shadows across the rugged terrain. Emily Morgan clutched her tattered shawl, tears streaming down her dirt-streaked face. She had escaped one nightmare, only to find herself in another. The Apache camp had taken her in 3 days ago, but the weight of her pursuers loomed heavy. "I'm not safe here," she sobbed, her words carrying on the evening wind. The camp fell silent. The Alpha Apache, a man of few words and many legends, approached with measured steps. His weathered face revealed nothing, but his eyes held something unexpected: recognition. When he finally spoke, his words left everyone stunned. Not a threat, not a dismissal, but something that connected their fates in ways no one could have imagined. What secret did he harbor that would change both their lives forever? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 3 days earlier, a lone figure stumbled through the unforgiving Badlands. Her once fine dress hung in tatters, her lips cracked from dehydration. In her trembling hands, she clutched a small silver hairbrush, its handle worn smooth from years of use. The initials CM were still visible, engraved on the back. This brush, her mother's final gift, had become Emily Morgan's only connection to a life that now seemed like a distant dream. 2 Apache scouts watched from the ridge. The younger one, Kimi, raised his bow. "A white woman. Alone," he whispered in Apache. The older scout, Tapua, studied her with weathered eyes. "Look how she moves." "She is hunted." Emily collapsed, her body surrendering to exhaustion. The silver hairbrush tumbled from her grasp, catching the harsh sunlight. Hours later, Emily awakened to unfamiliar sounds. Soft voices, the crackle of fire. Her eyes fluttered open to find herself in a small hide tent. An elderly woman, Makawi, pressed a cool cloth to her forehead. "Water!" Emily croaked. Makawi helped her sip from a clay cup. Outside, heated voices argued in Apache. "She brings trouble," a man's voice insisted. "She will die without help," Makawi called back, her tone brooking no argument. Emily clutched the blanket, searching frantically. "My brush, where is—" Makawi produced the silver hairbrush. "This belongs to another." "Not you." Emily's fingers closed around it. "My mother's, please." A shadow darkened the tent entrance. A tall figure stood silhouetted against the setting sun. The voices outside fell silent immediately. Emily sensed rather than saw his authority. It radiated from him like heat from desert stone. Nakoe, the tribe's leader, entered and studied Emily with unreadable eyes. He spoke to Makawi in Apache, his voice deep and controlled. "He asks who follows you," Makawi translated. Emily clutched the hairbrush tighter. "No one, I'm alone." Nakoe's gaze fell to the brush. Something flickered in his expression. Recognition. "Impossible." He spoke again, turned and left. Makawi nodded. "You stay. 3 days, then you must go." That night, fever took hold. Emily thrashed in delirium, haunted by nightmares. "Thomas, please." "Don't," she whimpered. "Mother, help me." Makawi tended her through the darkness, applying herbal remedies to Emily's feverish skin. Outside the tent, Nakohe sat motionless, listening to every word. By dawn, the fever broke. Emily awoke to find the silver hairbrush placed carefully beside her, freshly polished. Beyond the tent, daily life continued. Women grinding corn, children playing, warriors preparing for hunting. "You spoke of Thomas," Makawi said, entering with a bowl of stew. "A husband." Emily's hand instinctively touched a fading bruise on her wrist. "Yes, he did this?" Makawi gestured to Emily's injuries. Emily looked away. "He will never stop looking for me." Later that day, Emily ventured outside on unsteady legs. The camp paused to observe her, some with curiosity, others with open hostility. Children were pulled away from her path. Only Makawi showed kindness, guiding her through the camp. "Our people have suffered at white hands," she explained. "Trust must be earned." Emily nodded. "I understand." Her attention was drawn to a solitary figure atop a nearby ridge. Nakohe stood watching the horizon, a sentinel against approaching threats. The White Eyes call him the Alpha Apache, Makawi said, following Emily's gaze. He has not always been so stern. Life has carved him like the wind-shaped stone. Emily's fingers traced the initials on her mother's brush. He seemed to recognize this. Makawi's expression remained carefully neutral. Perhaps. That evening, Emily sat alone outside her tent. Across the camp, Nakohe conferred with tribal elders, their conversation intense. Occasionally, his gaze would drift toward her. Each time their eyes met, Emily felt a strange connection, as though they were two parts of a story not yet told. As night fell, Emily whispered to her mother's brush, "I don't know if I found safety or merely a different kind of danger." In the shadows beyond her tent, Nakohe paused, listening. His hand moved to a hidden pouch at his waist, touching something concealed within. His expression, had Emily seen it, would have raised more questions than answers. Dawn broke over the Apache camp. Nakohe stood alone at the edge of a small cliff, his weathered hands tracing the edge of a faded cavalry button. The brass was tarnished, its eagle emblem nearly worn smooth from years of handling. He'd taken it from the uniform of a dead soldier over 20 years ago, not as a trophy, but as a reminder of the day everything changed. Nakohe tucked the button away as Tapua approached. The woman slept without fever, Tapua reported. Nakohe nodded. "And our perimeter?" "Clear. But there are rumors of white men asking questions in the trading post 2 days' ride south." A muscle tightened in Nakohe's jaw. "Double the scouts!" No fires after dusk. The camp stirred below as women prepared morning meals and children emerged from tents. Despite their hardships, his people maintained their traditions. Nakohe watched as Makawi guided Emily toward the cooking fires, teaching her the morning rituals. "You believe the white woman's presence endangers us," Tapua observed. "Everything endangers us," Nakohe replied. "The railroad, the settlers, the cavalry. We survive by staying invisible." "Yet you allowed her to stay." Nakohe's hand moved instinctively to where the button was hidden. "She is hunted, like we are hunted." Later, Nakohe sat with the tribal elders beneath a juniper tree. The oldest, White Hawk, spoke with the authority of his 90 years. "The woman must leave tomorrow," White Hawk declared. "Her kind brings only suffering." Makawi stirred the coals with a stick. "She carries old wounds, not all on her skin. Her wounds are not our concern," another elder argued. Nakohe remained silent, watching Emily across the camp. She was attempting to help a young mother carry water, clearly struggling but determined. When she stumbled, spilling precious water, the young mother's initial irritation softened at Emily's genuine distress. "She learns," Nakohe said quietly. White Hawk's roomy eyes narrowed. "You have carried your burden alone too long, Nakohe. It clouds your judgment. My judgment kept our people alive when the bluecoats came for our children." The elders fell silent, remembering the day Nakohe became their leader. The day they lost their previous chief. "Nakohe's father. There is something else," Makawi said, her voice low. "The woman speaks a name in her sleep. Catherine." Nakohe's expression remained impassive, but his fingers sought the hidden button. White Hawk noticed. "You know this Catherine?" "A memory from another time," Nakohe replied. As the council dispersed, Makawi lingered. "The young ones whisper that you visit the Forbidden Canyon when the moon is dark." Nakohe met her knowing gaze. "The dead should rest in peace." "Some dead do not rest until promises are kept," she replied. Alone again, Nakohe climbed to his lookout point. From here, he could see the distant smudge of smoke from a white settlement. The world was closing in around them. Each year, their territory shrank. Each season, fewer game animals returned. Emily approached tentatively, carrying a small bundle. Makawi said, "This is for the leader," she said, offering dried meat wrapped in cloth. Nakohe accepted with a nod. "Will you tell me why everyone falls silent when you appear?" Emily asked. "They respect the chief. It's more than respect. It's," she searched for the word, "reverence mixed with fear." Nakohe turned his gaze back to the horizon. "Fear keeps people alive." "Not always," Emily replied. "Sometimes it just keeps them imprisoned." Something in her words struck him. He studied her face, the determined chin, the eyes that had seen too much sorrow. They reminded him of another woman long ago. "Your mother," he said abruptly. "She gave you that silver brush," Emily's breath caught. "You recognized it. You should rest. Tomorrow will be difficult. You're still sending me away." The brass button seemed to burn against Nakohe's chest. The promise he'd made all those years ago weighed against his responsibility to protect his tribe. "That depends," he said finally, "on what you're running from." As Emily departed, Kimmy approached urgently. "Riders," he reported. 6 men, heavily armed, searching the eastern ridges. Nakohe's decision crystallized in that moment. The button, his burden, and now this woman, all pieces of a story started long ago. "Prepare the tribe for possible evacuation," he ordered, "and bring the white woman to my tent at sunset." Keme hesitated. "The elders have decreed—" "I am still chief," Nakohe said firmly. "Some promises transcend tribal law." As darkness approached, Nakohe removed the cavalry button from its hiding place. Tonight, the past and present would finally collide. Sunset painted the Badlands in hues of amber and crimson as Emily was led to Nakohe's tent. Conversations hushed as she passed. The tribe's anxiety was palpable. Scouts had been coming and going all afternoon with urgent reports. Inside the spacious tent, Nakohe sat cross-legged before a small fire. Beside him lay a weathered journal bound in faded leather, its pages yellow with age, the edges water-stained and worn. He gestured for Emily to sit opposite him. Makawi joined them, her presence both comfort and caution. "Tell me about the man who hunts you," Nakohe said, without preamble. Emily's fingers twisted in her lap. "Thomas Blackwood, my husband. A cruel man," Makawi observed. "Powerful," Emily corrected. "He owns half the railway contracts in the territory. The governor dines at our table. Generals seek his favor." Nakohe's expression remained unchanged. "And he marks his property." His eyes flicked to the healing bruises on Emily's wrists. "I wasn't always his property," Emily said, her voice strengthening. "I was Catherine Morgan's daughter first." The name hung in the air. Nakohe reached for the journal but didn't open it. "Your mother taught at the mission school near Fort Laramie," he said. Emily's eyes widened. "How could you possibly—" "15 years ago," Nakohe continued, "she treated a young Apache boy for fever when the army doctor refused." "That's impossible," Emily whispered. "Mother never mentioned. Later, when that boy's village was raided, she hid him and his sister in the school cellar for 3 days." Emily shook her head in disbelief. "My mother was a teacher, not some revolutionary." Nakohe opened the journal and removed a folded paper tucked between its pages. He handed it to Emily. The charcoal drawing showed a younger Catherine Morgan standing proudly beside a teenage Apache boy. The careful strokes captured her mother's kind eyes perfectly. "She called me Joseph then," Nakohe said quietly. Emily's world tilted. "You're saying my mother harbored Apache children? That she knew you? She did more than know me. She saved what remained of our band when the cavalry came to relocate us." His tone made the euphemism clear. This journal was hers. She documented the army's broken promises, the stolen lands, the children taken. Emily ran her fingers over the familiar handwriting. "Why would she never tell me this?" "Because knowledge is dangerous," Makawi interjected. "Your mother understood this." Emily's eyes filled with questions. "But how did you get her journal?" "The night we fled, she gave it to me for safekeeping. Said someday it might bear witness." Nakohe paused. "She planned to join us later with supplies. She never came. There was a fever," Emily said softly. "When I was 12. They said she contracted it from the mission children." Nakohe nodded, as if confirming a long-held suspicion. "Before she sent us away, she made me promise something." Emily looked up from the journal, tears threatening. She said, "If ever my daughter needs sanctuary, you will provide it as I have for you." Nakohe's voice carried the weight of a vow. "I am bound by that promise." The tent fell silent, except for the crackling fire. Outside, the camp prepared for night, unaware of the history being unearthed within. "The men searching for you will be here by tomorrow." Nakohe said finally. Fear flashed across Emily's face. Then I must go. I won't bring danger to your people. You misunderstand, Nakohe replied. I will not surrender Catherine Morgan's daughter to a man who treats her as property. Emily stared at him in disbelief. The elders won't. I am chief, he said simply. Makoe's weathered hand covered Emily's. Now you understand why the people follow him without question. He honors his word, even when the cost is high. Emily looked down at her mother's journal, years of secrets contained within its pages. Thomas won't stop. He has resources, connections, and I have a promise to keep, Nakohe replied. Their conversation was interrupted by Tapua's urgent arrival. Riders approaching from the east, he reported. A white man leads them. They carry torches, Emily's breath caught. Blackwood. Nakohe rose in one fluid motion, the chief's authority now fully evident. Prepare the tribe for immediate relocation. We moved to the high canyons within the hour. As Tapua departed, Emily clutched the journal. You risk everything for a promise made to a woman long dead. Nakohe took back the journal, his fingers tracing the cover with unusual gentleness. Some debts can never be repaid, he said, but they must still be honored. As Emily left to prepare for evacuation, Nakohe opened the journal to its final entry. Catherine's last words, written the day she sent them away. I entrust my heart's work to the boy who became a leader. And should fate decree, I entrust my daughter to his protection as well. 10 miles east of the Apache camp, Thomas Blackwood dismounted his stallion with practiced elegance. Despite 3 days in the wilderness, his tailored suit remained impeccable. He removed his leather gloves deliberately, revealing a gleaming signet ring bearing the Blackwood Railway insignia, a gold phoenix rising from flames. Set with a blood-red ruby eye, Marshal, Blackwood addressed the former army scout leading his men. Explain to me again how 6 experienced trackers lose a solitary woman in open terrain. Marshal shifted uncomfortably. Sir, she's covered more ground than expected. And there's sign of Apache in these parts. Blackwood twisted the ring, a habit when his temper threatened. Apache, how convenient. A wiry Mexican tracker approached, holding tattered fabric. Mr. Blackwood, found this caught on mesquite, half-mile west. Blackwood took the scrap, rubbing it between his fingers. His expression softened with unsettling intensity. Emily's riding dress, the blue one. His voice turned contemplative. She wore this the first time I disciplined her. The men exchanged uncomfortable glances. If the Apache have her, Marshal ventured. Might be too late already, sir. Blackwood's hand lashed out, striking Marshal with the back of his ring hand. Blood appeared instantly on the tracker's lip. My wife is my property, Marshal. Nobody damages what's mine except me. Blackwood's voice remained unnervingly calm. I've invested too much in her education to start over with another bride. He turned to his second-in-command, a former cavalry officer named Weber. Contact Captain Reynolds at Fort Defiance. Tell him I've located the Apache band that's been raiding settlements. These Apache haven't raided anything, Weber said cautiously. Blackwood's smile didn't reach his eyes. By tomorrow they will have. At least according to the survivors, we leave as witnesses. Miles away, the Apache camp dissolved into the landscape with practiced efficiency. Women dismantled lodges while children extinguished fires. Warriors cached supplies that couldn't be carried. Emily worked alongside Makoe, learning the evacuation procedures perfected over generations of survival. How often must you flee like this? Emily asked, securing a medicine bundle. Too often, Makoe replied. But we endure. A young Apache woman approached, regarding Emily with suspicion. She thrust a heavy water skin into Emily's hands. Nijoni, Makoe chided gently in Apache. She is a guest. She is the reason we abandon our hunting grounds, Nijoni responded in English, ensuring Emily understood. Emily met her gaze directly. You're right. I've brought this danger to you. Nijoni seemed surprised by the admission. Then you should go. Face your husband alone. Enough, came Nakohe's voice. He approached, leading 2 horses. Nijoni, your father needs help with the weapons cache. After she departed, Nakohe handed Emily a small deerskin bag. "Carry this at all times." Inside was basic survival equipment: flint, knife, dried meat, and a small clay vial. "What's this?" Emily asked, holding up the vial. "Medicine." "For pain." His expression darkened. "Or a swift end, if capture is inevitable." Emily stared at the vial, understanding its purpose. "You think he would?" "I've seen what men like Blackwood do to those who defy them," Nakohe said. "The Apache do not abandon our own to such fates, but I'm not Apache." "You are Catherine's daughter," he replied simply. "That is enough." As darkness fell, the tribe moved silently through hidden ravines. Children did not cry. Dogs did not bark. Even horses seemed to understand the need for silence. Nakohe led them toward ancient hiding places in the high canyons, sacred ground where generations had sought refuge. Emily rode beside him, struggling to match his natural horsemanship. "How long can your people survive up there?" "Weeks, months if necessary. And then we find new hunting grounds. We adapt. We survive." Emily glanced back at the vanishing trail. "My husband doesn't abandon what he considers his." "Neither do I," Nakohe replied. Later that night at their temporary camp, Nakohe gathered his warriors. They formed a circle, passing Blackwood's signet ring, taken from a scout they'd captured and released as a warning. "Blackwood's kind believe in ownership," Nakohe told them, "of land, of resources, of people. He wears this ring to mark his possessions." The warriors studied the gold phoenix with its ruby eye, passing it with distaste. "We face not just one man, but what he represents," Nakohe continued. "The same force that has pushed us from our ancestral lands. The same greed that builds iron roads through sacred grounds." He took back the ring. "We fight not just for Catherine's daughter, but for ourselves." Emily watched from the shadows, witnessing the respect these men held for their leader. As Nakohe dismissed them, he approached her. "Tomorrow we reach the high canyons," he said, handing her the ring. "Keep this. Remember what pursues you." Emily closed her fist around the cold metal, feeling the weight of her husband's obsession and the unexpected strength of her newfound protectors. Dawn arrived with a shroud of mist clinging to the ravines. The Apache tribe had traveled through the night, making camp in a sheltered box canyon with sheer walls protecting three sides. Only a narrow entrance, easily guarded, allowed access. Exhausted, Emily helped establish the temporary camp. Her hands, once soft and pampered, now blistered from the unfamiliar labor. As she struggled with a heavy water skin, Nijoni approached. Without a word, the Apache woman handed Emily a pair of beautifully beaded moccasins. The intricate patterns featured thunderbirds in blue and white beads against rich brown leather. "Your boots will announce your presence to everyone within miles," Nijoni said matter-of-factly. Emily accepted the gift with surprise. "Thank you." "They were my sisters," Nijoni replied, then added pointedly, "She died during the last time we had to flee." Before Emily could respond, alarm calls echoed through the canyon. Warriors grabbed weapons and moved toward the entrance. Nakohe emerged from a strategy council, his expression grim. "Take the women and children to the high caves," he ordered Makawi. "Remain silent no matter what you hear." Emily stepped forward. "What's happening?" "Blackwood's scouts have found our trail faster than expected," Nakohe replied. "A small party approaches from the south." "Let me speak to them," Emily suggested desperately. "If I surrender myself, they would still attack," Nakohe cut her off. "Your husband wants more than you now. He wants retribution." Emily looked down at her new moccasins, guilt washing over her. "This is my fault." "No," Nijoni said unexpectedly. "Men like your husband have been stealing from us long before you arrived." Nakohe signaled his warriors. "We will ambush them before they reach the canyon. No killing unless absolutely necessary. Why show mercy?" A young warrior demanded. "Because dead white men bring more white men," Nakohe answered. "We need time, not martyrs." The warriors melted into the landscape, positioning themselves along the narrow approach to the canyon. Emily joined the women and children in the high caves, but found herself unable to remain hidden. She crept to a vantage point overlooking the canyon entrance. Below, 6 riders approached cautiously. They wore civilian clothes but moved with military precision. The lead man studied the ground, following the deliberately misleading trails Nakohe's warriors had left. The Apache attack came with terrifying suddenness. Warriors seemed to materialize from the very rocks, firing arrows that struck the ground near the horses' hooves. The mounts panicked, throwing 2 men. Another took an arrow through his sleeve, pinning him to his saddle without drawing blood. The scouts returned fire wildly, their shots echoing uselessly off canyon walls. One man managed to squeeze off a more carefully aimed shot. From her perch, Emily saw an Apache warrior, Kimi, stumble and fall. The fight escalated quickly. Hand-to-hand combat erupted as the Apache closed in. One scout drew a wicked hunting knife, slashing at Tapua. Blood sprayed across the rocks. Unable to watch passively, Emily scrambled down from her position. She reached the wounded Keme, who clutched his shoulder where the bullet had grazed him. "Stay back," he warned. Emily tore a strip from her petticoat. "Let me help." Nearby, Nakohe grappled with the scout leader. They crashed against the canyon wall, fighting for control of the man's revolver. The gun discharged, the bullet ricocheting off stone. When the brief, violent clash ended, 4 scouts lay bound on the ground. 2 had escaped to carry news back to Blackwood. Tapua's wound was serious but not fatal. Keme would recover. Nakohe approached the captives, blood trickling from a cut above his eye. He squatted beside the leader, who glared with undisguised hatred. "Tell Blackwood that the woman is under Apache protection," Nakohe said in perfect English. "Any man who approaches our territory will be considered an enemy." Apache protection. The man spat. "By sundown tomorrow, you'll have the U.S. cavalry on your trail. Blackwood's already sent for them." Nakohe remained impassive. "We know your army's methods well. We will be gone long before they arrive." He rose and addressed his warriors. "Take their weapons and horses. Release them on foot." Later, as the tribe prepared to resume their journey to their ancestral refuge, Emily noticed Nakohe studying one of the confiscated items, a military-issue spyglass with brass fittings. He extended it fully, scanning the distant plains, where dust indicated Blackwood's main force. "How many?" Emily asked. "Too many," Nakohe replied. "And now we have wounded to slow our pace." Emily's fingers touched the beaded moccasins that had allowed her to move silently to help Keme. "I should never have come here." Nakohe lowered the spyglass. "Sometimes we do not choose our battles, Emily Morgan. Sometimes they choose us." He handed her the spyglass. "Watch for yourself. See what kind of man pursues you." Through the lens, Emily saw Blackwood's distant figure, imperious even in the wilderness, directing his men with the confidence of absolute authority. The sight chilled her. "We leave immediately," Nakohe announced to the tribe. "The high canyons are still a day's journey away." As they departed, Emily noted how Nijoni helped support the wounded Tapua, and how the warrior nodded gratefully when Emily offered her water skin. Something had shifted. No longer was she merely an intruder. By helping tend the wounded, she had taken her first step toward belonging. The tribe moved deeper into Badland territory as the sun climbed higher. Heat shimmered off distant rock formations, distorting the landscape into wavering mirages. Nakohe led them through ravines and dry creek beds, places where tracking would be difficult. As they paused to rest the horses in the shadow of a massive sandstone formation, Nakohe approached Emily, carrying what appeared to be a simple wooden flute. Its surface was smooth from years of handling, decorated with faded symbols of eagles and lightning. "My father's courting flute," he explained, turning it in his hands. "I was to learn its songs before I took a wife." "It's beautiful," Emily said, surprised at the personal disclosure. Nakohe's expression revealed nothing. "Today, it serves a different purpose." He demonstrated how different notes carried through the canyons, some traveling for miles, others absorbed by the stone. 3 short notes means danger approaches. 2 long notes mean safe passage ahead, he explained. "Our scouts will communicate our path without revealing our position." Emily listened as he played a complex sequence. Within minutes, a distant reply echoed back. "Blackwood's men are following our false trail to the north," Nakohe translated. "We have perhaps 4 hours before they realize their mistake." Throughout the day, the flute's haunting notes guided their journey. Emily marveled at how the Apache moved through the landscape, not conquering it, but becoming one with it. Where she saw only hostile terrain, they found resources: water seeping from seemingly dry rock, edible plants camouflaged among weeds, natural shelters invisible until you stood directly before them. By late afternoon, fatigue overwhelmed her. Unused to such exertion, she swayed in her saddle. Nakohe noticed immediately. "We rest here briefly," he announced. Makawi offered Emily pemmican, a dense mixture of dried meat, fat, and berries. "Eat, it will sustain you." "How much farther?" Emily asked, muscles aching from the unfamiliar riding posture. "The high canyons lie beyond tomorrow's sunset," Makawi replied. "But tonight we face the most dangerous passage." Nakohe gathered the warriors while the tribe rested. He drew a crude map in the dirt with a stick, explaining their route in Apache. Emily understood nothing of the language, but recognized the seriousness in their expressions. When they resumed their journey, the terrain grew increasingly treacherous. Narrow paths wound along cliff edges where a misstep meant certain death. Mothers carried infants secured tightly to their bodies. Children too young to walk safely were passed from adult to adult along the most precarious sections. "Stay close," Nijoni told Emily, unexpectedly offering guidance. "Step only where I step." When darkness fell, they continued by the light of a quarter moon. The flute's notes became softer, shorter, a code for extreme caution. Scouts reported back more frequently, their signals creating an invisible network of surveillance around the moving tribe. Near midnight, they reached what appeared to be a dead end, a sheer cliff face blocking the narrow canyon. Nakohe dismounted and approached the wall, feeling along its surface. He located a nearly invisible crevice and motioned the tribe forward. "Single file," he ordered. "Horses must be led separately." Emily watched in amazement as the tribe disappeared one by one into what seemed like solid rock. When her turn came, she discovered the crevice opened into a twisting passage barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through sideways. The passage eventually widened into a hidden valley ringed by protective cliffs, an oasis, with a small spring feeding a pool of clear water. Ancient petroglyphs covered the surrounding rock faces, telling stories of people who had sought refuge here for countless generations. "We camp here," Nakohe announced. "No fires." As the exhausted tribe established a cold camp, Nakohe played a different sequence on the flute. The notes were deeper, almost mournful. "A prayer?" Emily asked Makawi. "A remembrance," the old woman corrected, "for those who died defending these hiding places." Later, Emily found Nakohe standing alone, staring at the petroglyphs illuminated by moonlight. "Your people have survived here for centuries," she observed. "Survived, but at what cost?" he replied. "Each generation loses more than the last: land, traditions, lives." He tucked the flute into his belt. "My father believed we could find peace with the white man. His reward was a cavalry bullet." Emily had no response to this stark truth. "Rest," Nakohe said finally. "Tomorrow we divide the tribe. The wounded and children will take the safer, longer path. The rest of us will create a diversion to draw Blackwood away." "I should go with those creating the diversion," Emily said. "I'm the one he wants." Nakohe studied her with newfound respect. "You begin to think like Apache. I begin to understand what it means to be hunted," she corrected. The flute at Nakohe's side seemed to embody this shared understanding, a bridge between their different worlds, communicating what words could not. "Tomorrow," he said, "we will teach you to disappear." Before dawn, the tribe divided. The main group, led by Tapwa, despite his injury, took the safer route with the children, elderly, and most supplies. Nakohe selected 5 warriors and Nijoni to accompany him and Emily on the diversionary path, a treacherous route that would leave obvious signs for Blackwood's trackers to follow. As Emily prepared to depart, Makawi pressed something into her hand, a small bone comb carved with intricate spiral patterns, its teeth stained amber with age. "For untangling more than just hair," the old woman said cryptically. Emily examined the delicate implement. "It's beautiful. It belonged to my grandmother, who used it to comb the hair of our tribe's first white friend, a woman much like you." Makawi's roomy eyes held Emily's. "Survival requires adaptation. Remember this." The small party set out as the first hint of daylight touched the eastern horizon. They traveled light, carrying minimal supplies and moving at a punishing pace. Emily struggled to keep up, determined not to become the weak link. By mid-morning, they reached a desolate stretch where shale and gravel made tracking easy, deliberately so. Here they made obvious camps, disturbed the ground, and left clear evidence of their passage. "Now we double back," Nakohe explained, "and take the hidden paths." They backtracked carefully, using rocks to avoid leaving footprints. At a massive boulder field, they separated further. The warriors continued north to create additional false trails, while Nakohe, Emily, and Nijoni veered east through a nearly invisible passage. "The three of us will rendezvous with the main group tomorrow," Nakohe explained. "Blackwood's men will waste days following ghosts." They traveled through the hottest hours, stopping only when Emily nearly collapsed from heat exhaustion. In a small grotto shaded by overhanging rock, Nijoni showed her how to conserve water by wetting a cloth and placing it over her mouth to cool the air she breathed. "My husband," Emily began hesitantly, "he taught me that wilderness kills the unprepared." "Your husband knows nothing of living with the land," Nijoni replied. "He only knows conquest." When they resumed their journey, the terrain became increasingly forbidding. Narrow ledges hugged cliff faces, sometimes barely wide enough for single-file passage. At one particularly harrowing section, Emily froze, vertigo overwhelming her. "I can't," she whispered, pressing against the cliff face. Nakohe turned back. Rather than offering empty reassurances, he simply extended his hand. "Look at me, not down." His calm steadiness gave her the courage to continue, one tentative step at a time. By dusk, they reached a sheltered overhang where ancient smoke had blackened the stone ceiling. Here they risked a small, nearly smokeless fire of dry sage and cedar. As darkness enveloped them, Emily used Makawi's bone comb to untangle her wind-knotted hair. The familiar action brought unexpected comfort. "In my previous life," she said quietly, "I had a lady's maid to arrange my hair each morning. Thomas insisted on perfect appearance. Was anything about that life truly yours?" Nijoni asked. The question struck Emily with surprising force. She considered the rigid routines of her married life, schedules and behaviors dictated entirely by her husband's preferences. Even her clothing had been selected to showcase his wealth and taste. "I had my mother's memory," she finally answered. "My books, when Thomas permitted reading." Nakohe, who had been keeping watch, joined the conversation unexpectedly. "Catherine spoke often of books. She taught me to read English with stories of distant places." Emily looked up in surprise. "You can read English?" A hint of amusement crossed his normally stoic features. "Catherine believed education was freedom." "She taught me the same," Emily replied, "before Thomas forbade anything that might fill my head with unsuitable notions." The bone comb moved rhythmically through her hair as Emily spoke of her mother's unconventional ideas, her belief in women's education, her respect for native cultures, her quiet defiance of social expectations. With each memory shared, Emily seemed to reclaim pieces of herself long suppressed. Nijoni listened intently. "Your mother sounds like a woman of strong medicine." "She would have loved to hear you say that," Emily smiled. Later, as Nijoni slept, Emily found Nakohe still vigilant at the edge of their shelter. She joined him, offering the bone comb. "Your hair could use attention as well," she said lightly. He accepted with the slightest nod, a significant gesture from a man so reserved. As Emily worked the comb through his long black hair, an unexpected intimacy developed in the silence. "Tell me," she finally asked, "what else did my mother teach you?" "That some promises outlive us," he replied. "That courage wears many faces." He paused. that people can bridge worlds when they choose to see beyond fear. Emily's hand stilled. Is that what we're doing? Bridging worlds? Nakohe turned to face her, their proximity suddenly apparent. I do not know what we are doing, Emily Morgan. I only know it cannot be undone. The bone comb passed between cultures and generations, rested between them like a question neither was ready to answer. Dawn found them moving again, traversing terrain that grew increasingly vertical. Massive sandstone walls rose on either side, creating a labyrinth of twisting canyons. The sun barely penetrated these depths, casting everything in cool blue shadow. We're close, Nakohe announced, as they navigated a particularly narrow passage. Emily, exhausted but determined, followed closely. Her body had begun adapting to the rigors of the journey, muscles responding more efficiently, lungs drawing deeper breaths, eyes detecting subtle trail signs that would have been invisible days ago. The passage suddenly widened into a breathtaking hidden canyon. A small spring trickled down one wall, creating a modest pool surrounded by improbably lush vegetation. Above, the canyon walls curved inward, making it invisible from above. Nijoni approached the spring with reverence, murmuring words in Apache before drinking. The ancestors' tears, she explained to Emily. Sacred water that never fails, even in the driest seasons. Near the spring hung a leather pouch decorated with turquoise beads and hawk feathers. It swayed gently in the breeze, seemingly placed with deliberate care. A medicine bundle, Nakohe explained, noticing Emily's curiosity. Left by those seeking visions or giving thanks, Emily approached cautiously. May I? Nakohe nodded. It calls to you. That is permitted. The medicine bundle was smaller than her palm, crafted from elk hide and stitched with sinew. The beadwork depicted a stylized thunderbird embracing a human figure. Protection, Nijoni said, standing beside her. Placed here during the last full moon by one who sought guidance. Emily felt strangely moved. Do your people leave these often? Only when the spirits demand attention, Nijoni replied. Some places thin the veil between worlds. This canyon is such a place. They established camp near the spring, concealing their presence with practiced efficiency. Nakohe estimated they were half a day ahead of Blackwood's men and a full day from reuniting with the main tribe. We rest until dusk, he decided, then travel through the night. While Nijoni gathered edible plants growing near the spring, Nakohe showed Emily how to create shelter using a small tarp and natural features. Their fingers brushed occasionally, each contact sending unexpected awareness through Emily. You adapt quickly, he observed. Necessity, she replied. And good teachers. As afternoon shadows lengthened, distant thunder rolled across the canyon rim. Dark clouds gathered with surprising speed. Flash flood danger, Nakohe announced, immediately moving their camp higher. They secured their position on an elevated shelf just as the sky opened. Rain pounded the canyon floor, transforming the gentle spring into a torrent within minutes. Water rose with alarming speed below them. In their cramped shelter, Emily found herself pressed between Nakohe and Nijoni as they watched nature's violence unfold. The shared vulnerability created an unexpected intimacy. Will this delay Blackwood? Emily asked. Temporarily, Nakohe replied. But it also erases our trail. The spirits intervene, Nijoni murmured, touching the medicine bundle she'd removed from its place for safekeeping. As night approached, the rain diminished to a gentle patter. Their shelter, though damp, had protected them from the worst. Emily helped prepare a cold meal of pemmican and dried berries. My mother wrote about Apache cooking in her journal, she commented. She admired your people's knowledge of desert plants. Catherine had a curious spirit, Nakohe said. She recorded our herbs, our healing practices. That knowledge died with her, Emily said regretfully. Thomas burned her papers after her death, said they contained savage superstitions. Nakohe's expression hardened. Yet you kept her hairbrush. Her memory, hidden things, Emily admitted. Like this canyon, Nijoni unexpectedly offered Emily the medicine bundle. Perhaps the thunder speaks to you as it did to your mother. Emily hesitated. I don't understand your ways. Understanding comes after acceptance, Nijoni replied. Not before. Emily carefully took the bundle, feeling its surprising weight.
What should I do with it?
Listen, Nijoni said simply. That night, unable to sleep despite exhaustion, Emily sat at the edge of their shelter, the medicine bundle cradled in her palms. The storm had cleared, revealing stars so brilliant they seemed close enough to touch. Nakohe joined her silently, his presence somehow both unsettling and comforting. When I was a child, Emily said softly, my mother would point to the stars and tell me that no matter how far apart people were, they could look at the same stars and feel connected. A wise teaching, Nakohe replied. Was she truly your friend? Emily asked suddenly. Or did she merely study your people? Nakohe considered before answering. She began as observer, became teacher, then friend, then ally. Boundaries blurred. As they are blurring for us, Emily noted. The medicine bundle seemed to warm in her hands, though perhaps it was merely her imagination. Thomas would destroy this world, she whispered. Not from hatred, but from blindness. He simply cannot see its value. Many white men share this blindness, Nakohe replied. They measure worth only in what can be taken, used, sold. A coyote called in the distance, its voice echoing through the canyon. Another answered from the opposite rim. They find each other, even in darkness, Emily observed. Nakohe's hand covered hers, the medicine bundle pressed between their palms. As do all who seek with open hearts, the moment stretched between them, taut with unspoken possibilities. The Nijoni stirred in her sleep, breaking the spell. Dawn comes early, Nakohe said, withdrawing his hand. We should rest. As Emily finally drifted towards sleep, the medicine bundle rested against her heart. Its presence oddly reassuring, a tangible connection to this new world that was becoming less foreign with each passing day. They departed the hidden canyon under the cover of night, navigating by starlight through terrain that would be treacherous even in daylight. Nakohe led with unerring confidence, while Nijoni guarded their rear, erasing signs of their passage. Dawn found them traversing a narrow ridge between two deep ravines. Emily paused briefly, surveying the breathtaking landscape stretching to the horizon. For a moment, she felt a sense of freedom she'd never known in her previous life. Movement, Nijoni whispered suddenly, pointing to dust clouds rising in the distance. Nakohe quickly led them to a sheltered vantage point. Through Blackwood's spyglass, he studied the approaching riders. 8 men, he reported grimly. Following our original trail perfectly. How? Emily asked. The storm should have washed it away. They have one of ours, Nakohe replied, his jaw tightening as he handed her the spyglass. Through the lens, Emily could see a 9th figure, an Apache man, hands bound, being pulled along on a lead rope like an animal. Kemi, Nijoni gasped when it was her turn to look. One of our warriors from the diversion party. They're forcing him to track us, Nakohe concluded. We need to move faster, but as they prepared to depart, Emily noticed something glinting in the rising sun, metal reflecting light from a different direction than Blackwood's approaching group. There, she pointed. Another party? Nakohe verified with the spyglass. 3 riders cutting across to intercept us. They're using pincer movement. Their situation had suddenly become dire. Forward movement would take them directly into a trap. Retreat would lead back to Blackwood's main force. We need to split up, Nakohe decided. Nijoni, take Emily to the high rocks. I will lead them away. No, Emily protested. I won't let you sacrifice yourself. It is not sacrifice, Nakohe replied. It is strategy. From his belt, he removed a strange-looking weapon, a wooden handle attached to 3 leather cords, each ending with a stone weight. It was a bowler, traditionally used for hunting birds and small game. This will slow them without killing, he explained, handing it to Emily. If they get too close, aim for the legs. Emily tested its weight uncertainly. I don't know how to use this. Spin the weights and release, he demonstrated, with a second bowler. Distance is more important than accuracy. The weapon felt alien in her hands, primitive, yet precisely balanced. She practiced a tentative swing, feeling the weights gain momentum. We don't run, Emily said suddenly, an idea forming. We set a trap of our own. Nakohe studied her face. What do you propose? Emily quickly outlined her plan. It was risky, but offered better odds than flight or confrontation. To her surprise, both Nakohe and Nijoni agreed. They worked rapidly, preparing the narrow passage between ravines. Nijoni gathered specific plants, while Nakohe and Emily positioned rocks and prepared the terrain. When finished, they concealed themselves in a small cave overlooking the prepared area. "They come," Nijoni whispered an hour later. The three riders approached cautiously, following their trail exactly as anticipated. The leader was Marshall, Blackwood's chief tracker. "Perfect," Emily whispered. They sent the advance party. When the riders reached the center of the narrow passage, Nakohe gave the signal. Emily released a carefully placed boulder, sending it crashing down the slope. Not aimed to hit the men, but to startle their horses. The animals reared in panic as planned. Simultaneously, Nijoni threw bundles of burning creosote brush onto the path, creating thick, acrid smoke. In the confusion, Nakohe launched his bola with practiced precision, entangling one rider's legs. Emily followed suit, her throw less skilled, but still effective enough to further panic a second horse. The animal bolted, throwing its rider hard against the rocks. The third man, Marshall, maintained control of his mount and drew his pistol. Before he could fire, Nakohe was on him, knocking him from the saddle. They rolled in the dust, fighting for the weapon, a shot discharged, echoing across the ravines. For a terrible moment, Emily couldn't tell who had been hit. Then Nakohe rose, blood streaming from a gash on his arm, but otherwise intact. Marshall lay unconscious. They worked quickly, binding the three men with their own ropes. The fallen tracker's saddlebags yielded an unexpected treasure, a leather-bound map case embossed with the Blackwood Railway insignia. Inside was a detailed survey map of the entire region, with proposed railway routes drawn in red ink. Emily unfolded it with trembling hands. "This is what he really wants. Not just me, all of this land." The map showed the planned railroad cutting directly through Apache territory, including the sacred canyon they had just left. The water rights alone would be worth a fortune, she explained. "Thomas always said that whoever controls water controls the West." Nakohe studied the map grimly. "This explains why he brought so many men to recover one runaway wife." From Marshall's pocket, Nakohe retrieved a folded document, military orders authorizing assistance in subduing hostile Apache bands at Blackwood's request. "We must warn the tribe," Nijoni urged. "The soldiers could reach the high canyon before we do." As they prepared to leave, Emily carefully repacked the map in its case. "This is evidence of what he's planning. If we could get this to the territorial governor, the same governor who dines at your table." Nakohe asked skeptically. Emily's expression hardened. "There are honest officials who would oppose this land theft if they knew. My husband's power comes from operating in shadows. With their captives securely bound but positioned safely, they departed quickly, taking the men's horses and weapons. The bola returned to Nakohe's belt, a simple tool that had helped change the balance of power, at least temporarily. "You fought well," he told Emily as they rode. "The Apache way." Emily felt the unfamiliar weight of a captured revolver at her waist. "Not by choice," she replied. "But I'm learning that survival sometimes requires becoming someone new." They rode hard through the afternoon, pushing the captured horses to their limits. Nakohe's wound had been hastily bandaged, but Emily noticed the growing bloodstain with concern. He dismissed her worries with stoic determination. "The high canyon is near," he assured them as dusk approached. "We will reach our people by nightfall." The landscape grew increasingly vertical, towering mesas and plunging canyons creating a natural fortress. As they navigated a particularly treacherous switchback trail, Nijoni suddenly raised her hand in warning. "Listen," she whispered. A haunting, low whistle echoed through the rocks, 3 notes rising. "Two falling, our people," Nakohe confirmed, responding with a similar pattern. Moments later, 2 Apache scouts materialized from the landscape, weapons lowered once they recognized Nakohe. After a brief exchange in their native tongue, the scouts led them through a nearly invisible crevice in the cliff face. The passage twisted through solid rock before suddenly opening into a massive hidden canyon. Unlike the intimate space where they had weathered the storm, this canyon was vast, nearly a mile across, with steep walls rising hundreds of feet on all sides. A small stream meandered through its center, supporting stands of cottonwood and willow. The entire Apache band had established camp here, their presence nearly invisible among the natural features. As they rode into the camp, Emily felt the weight of countless eyes upon her. Children peeked from behind mothers' skirts. Warriors paused in their activities, expressions guarded. Makawi approached immediately, inspecting Nakohe's wound with a healer's practiced eye. "Foolish man," she scolded gently, bleeding like a stuck elk. While Makawi led Nakohe away for treatment, Whitehawk and the other elders gathered around Emily and Nijoni. Eager for news, Emily produced the map case, explaining what they had discovered about Blackwood's true intentions. As Tapua translated, murmurs of anger spread through the gathering crowd. "The white man's iron horse," Whitehawk spat. "Always it comes to this." Later that evening, as Makawi treated Nakohe's wound in his lodge, the tribal council convened. Unlike previous discussions, Emily was explicitly invited to attend. She sat beside Nijoni, acutely aware of her outsider status despite recent events. At the center of the council circle lay an object of extraordinary presence, a ceremonial pipe carved from deep red stone. Its long wooden stem adorned with eagle feathers and intricate beadwork. Its bowl was shaped like a buffalo, the creature's spine forming the pipe's keel. Whitehawk lifted the pipe with reverence. "Our ancestors have smoked this pipe for 7 generations, he explained in halting English for Emily's benefit. "When decisions affect all the people, we seek clarity through sacred smoke." The ritual preparation was methodical. Whitehawk filled the pipe with a mixture of tobacco and herbs, then used a coal from the central fire to light it. After drawing the first breath, he passed it to Nakohe, who now sat with his arm properly bandaged. The pipe made its way around the circle, each council member taking a deliberate draw before passing it onward. When it reached Emily, she hesitated. "I am not of your people," she said uncertainly. "Yet you fight alongside us," Nakohe replied. "The pipe does not recognize blood, only intention." Emily accepted the pipe, the stone bowl warm against her palms. She drew carefully as she had seen the others do, the smoke surprisingly sweet and fragrant. As she exhaled, a curious calm settled over her. Whether from the herbs or the solemnity of the moment, she couldn't tell. The discussion that followed was measured and deliberate. Tapua reported that all the warriors sent on diversionary routes had returned safely, except for Kemi. Emily shared details about Blackwood's forces and the military involvement. Nakohe explained his assessment of their tactical position. "We are safe here for now," he concluded. "But Blackwood will not simply abandon his plans. The railroad survey must be completed by winter for the spring construction to begin. Then we fight," a young warrior declared. Whitehawk shook his head. "We cannot defeat the bluecoats in battle. History has taught us this. What of the white woman?" Another elder asked, looking directly at Emily. "She has brought this danger upon us." Emily met his gaze steadily. "Yes, and I will leave if that is your wish." "To do what?" Whitehawk challenged. "To use what I know of my husband against him," she replied. "I lived in his house for 3 years. I know his methods, his weaknesses." Nakohe studied her with unreadable eyes. "You would return to him?" "Not as his wife," Emily clarified. "But perhaps as his captive. I could work from within." The suggestion created immediate controversy. Some supported the plan's boldness. Others declared it foolhardy. The sacred pipe continued its circuit as the debate grew heated. Finally, Nijoni spoke, a rare occurrence in the male-dominated council. "I did not trust this woman when she came," she admitted. "I saw only danger. Now I see courage as well." She recounted how Emily had helped during the ambush, how she had tended wounds, how she had embraced their ways despite their initial rejection. Makawi added her voice. "Catherine's daughter has her mother's spirit. The spirits do not bring such allies by accident." as the pipe completed its final round. Whitehawk tapped its bowl against a stone to empty the ashes. "We will not send you to certain death," he told Emily, "but neither can we promise your safety here. The decision before us is not just about one woman or one railroad. It is about our people's future." Nakohe's voice cut through the tension. "There is another way, one that does not require Emily's sacrifice or our defeat." All eyes turned to him as he reached for the ceremonial pipe, holding it horizontally across his palms. "Like this pipe, we must become a bridge between worlds," he said. "Emily knows the white man's law. We know this land. Together, perhaps we find a path that serves both." As the council continued deep into the night, Emily felt a profound shift. The ceremonial pipe had transformed her from outsider to participant, from fugitive to ally. Whatever plan emerged, she was now irrevocably part of this tribe's story. Dawn arrived with wisps of fog clinging to the canyon floor. The tribe had been on high alert through the night, doubling guards at the hidden entrance. Emily emerged from Makawe's lodge, where the women had offered her shelter, to find Nakohe already conferring with scouts near the central fire. Their plan, hashed out during the long council, was both daring and desperate. Using Emily's knowledge of Blackwood's operations and Nakohe's understanding of the territorial politics, they would attempt to expose the illegal nature of the railroad's land grab. Rather than direct confrontation, they would seek intervention from federal authorities not yet in Blackwood's pocket. As Emily approached the group, a young warrior named Hinto rushed into camp. "Breathless from running, riders," he reported in Apache, which Nakohe translated for Emily. 2 miles east of the hidden entrance." "How many?" Nakohe asked sharply. 20, maybe more." "Soldiers with them." The news sent a ripple of tension through the gathering crowd. No one had expected Blackwood to locate them so quickly. "How did they find us?" Whitehawk demanded. "This place is known only to our people." A terrible silence fell over the group as the implications became clear. Someone had betrayed them. Nakohe issued rapid orders, sending warriors to defensive positions and organizing the evacuation of children and elders to higher caves. As the camp erupted into controlled activity, Emily noticed Takoda, a younger warrior who had been watching her with particular intensity since her arrival, slipping away toward the canyon's western rim. "Nakohe," she said quietly, nodding in Takoda's direction. "He moves away from the defensive positions." Nakohe's eyes narrowed as he observed Takoda's furtive retreat. Without a word, he signaled to Tapua and 2 other warriors. They immediately understood, moving to intercept Takoda through different routes. Emily followed Nakohe as they traced Takoda's path up a narrow trail leading to the canyon rim. When they reached a vantage point overlooking a small plateau, they found Tapua and his men already restraining a struggling Takoda. At the warrior's feet lay a silver flask gleaming in the morning sun. Its surface was elegantly engraved with intricate filigree patterns and bore a small medallion with the initials T.B., Thomas Blackwood. "Thomas Blackwood's whiskey flask," Emily confirmed, recognizing the item immediately. "He carries it everywhere." Takoda's expression shifted from defiance to fear as Nakohe picked up the incriminating object. "How long?" Nakohe asked, his voice dangerously calm. Takoda's reply came in rapid Apache, which Tapua translated for Emily. "He says Blackwood's men caught him 3 days ago. Offered him money and whiskey for information about our movements." Tapua's voice hardened. "He told them about the High Canyon. Said he did it to save us, that resistance would only bring more death." The gathered warriors' expressions reflected disgust and anger. In Apache culture, betrayal of the tribe was among the gravest offenses. Nakohe uncapped the flask, the sharp smell of whiskey cutting through the morning air. "This is what you sold us for? The white man's poison?" "You don't understand," Takoda replied in English, surprising Emily. "Blackwood showed me papers, government orders. The Apache are finished. He offered land for us if I helped him find the woman." "Land?" Nakohe's voice was incredulous. "You believed a man who steals land would give it freely?" Emily stepped forward. "Thomas never honors such promises. He's manipulated men far more powerful than you. Dakota spat at her feet. This is all because of you. The tribe suffered nothing until you came. Enough, Nakohe commanded. He turned to Tapua. Take him back to camp. The council will decide his fate. As Dakota was led away, Emily examined the silver flask more closely. This wasn't just payment, she realized. Thomas sent this deliberately. He wants me to know he's coming. Nakohe nodded grimly. And now we have lost our greatest advantage, secrecy. They returned to the main camp to find preparations for defense well underway. Women were gathering medicinal herbs and preparing bandages. Children and the elderly were being relocated to caves high on the canyon walls. Warriors prepared weapons and fortified the narrow entrance. Makawi approached, her ancient face lined with concern. The spirits are troubled, she said. I feel death circling. Emily's fingers closed around Blackwood's flask. If I surrender myself— No! Nakohe cut her off firmly. That time has passed. Blackwood now wants more than his wife returned. Whitehawk joined them, his expression grave after hearing of Dakota's betrayal. What of our plan to seek help from the territorial authorities? There's no time, Nakohe replied. We must prepare for battle. Emily studied the silver flask in her hands, turning it slowly. An idea began forming. Dangerous, but perhaps their only option. What if we don't defend the canyon? She suggested. What if we make them think we've fled, then ambush them once they're inside? Nako considered this. The canyon offers few places for ambush. They would have the advantage of numbers and firearms. Not if we control when and where they enter, Emily countered, her mind racing. And not if they believe they face a much smaller force. She outlined her plan, a strategy that used Blackwood's arrogance and expectations against him. It required perfect timing and considerable risk, but offered better odds than direct confrontation or flight. As Emily explained, Nakohe's expression shifted from skepticism to consideration. By the time she finished, even Whitehawk was nodding slowly. You think like Apache now, Makawi observed with grudging approval. Nakohe took the silver flask from Emily's hands, studying the ornate TB medallion. Blackwood sent this to intimidate. Instead, it will be his undoing. He tucked the flask into his belt. Prepare yourselves, he told the gathered leaders. Tonight, we turn the hunter into prey. As the tribe dispersed to implement their desperate plan, Emily felt a strange calm descend. The silver flask, a symbol of Blackwood's wealth and arrogance, had unwittingly provided the key to their strategy. Like the man himself, it was ornate, ostentatious, and ultimately hollow. Midday sun beat down on the canyon rim as Emily and Nakohe observed the approaching force from a concealed position. Blackwood had assembled an impressive company, 20 hired guns, a dozen soldiers in cavalry blue, and Thomas himself, impeccable even in this wilderness, riding a magnificent black stallion at the head of the column. Your husband brings an army for one woman, Nakohe observed. Not for a woman, Emily replied. For an empire. Their vantage point offered a commanding view of the narrow approach to the hidden canyon entrance. Blackwood's men moved with military precision, scouts ranging ahead of the main force. Among them, Emily spotted Keme, still bound but apparently being forced to guide them. Nakohe passed her a strange object, an oval piece of polished obsidian set in a simple wooden frame with a small handle. The black volcanic glass had been polished to a mirror-like finish, its surface reflecting Emily's face in distorted darkness. A warrior's mirror, Nakohe explained. For signals, he demonstrated how sunlight could be reflected off the obsidian surface, creating flashes visible at great distances. Unlike conventional mirrors, the black glass reduced the chance of accidental reflection, giving away their position. 3 flashes means they've reached the first marker, he instructed. 2 means they've found the entrance. 1 continuous flash means they've entered the canyon. Emily practiced the technique, angling the obsidian to catch and direct the sunlight. The signals would be crucial for coordinating their plan. Timing everything depended on perfect communication. Below, Blackwood's force had reached a small clearing half a mile from the hidden entrance. They established a temporary camp with military efficiency. Thomas dismounted, removing his gloves with deliberate grace as he conferred with a cavalry officer. "Captain Reynolds," Emily identified him. "Thomas has him in his pocket." Through Blackwood's spyglass, she could see Thomas's expression, confident, almost amused. "He believed he had won already. He expects me to be terrified," Emily said quietly. "He's never understood that there are worse things than death, such as—" "Nico," he asked. "Living without freedom," she replied. "Something your people understand all too well." As afternoon stretched toward evening, they watched Blackwood send out teams to scout the perimeter. The plan required patience, allowing the enemy to believe they had the upper hand, while the Apache repositioned according to Emily's strategy. Finally, near sunset, Blackwood's main force began moving toward the canyon entrance. Gemma was pushed ahead, clearly reluctant but given no choice. Emily signaled with the obsidian mirror, sending 3 flashes to the warriors hidden throughout the canyon. "Now we wait," Nakohe said, rising from their observation post. "The entrance is prepared as you suggested." They made their way down a hidden trail to join the main tribe gathered at their fallback position, a narrow side canyon with multiple escape routes. Tensions ran high as they awaited news from the scouts. "If this fails," Whitehawk said to Emily, "our people will pay with blood." "It won't fail," she replied with more confidence than she felt. "Thomas is predictable in his arrogance." 2 flashes from a distant observer confirmed that Blackwood had located the entrance. Minutes stretched like hours as they waited for the final signal. When it came, a single, sustained reflection, a ripple of tension moved through the gathered tribe. "They have entered," Nakohe announced. "All warriors to positions." The tribe moved with practiced silence, each person knowing their role in the complex plan. Emily followed Nakohe to a ridge overlooking the canyon floor, where they could observe without being seen. Below, Blackwood's men spread through the apparently abandoned camp, searching lodges and examining signs of hasty departure. Thomas rode slowly through the center, his posture radiating displeasure at finding his quarry fled. Captain Reynolds approached him, gesturing toward tracks leading deeper into the canyon. Thomas nodded sharply, dispatching men to follow the trail while maintaining a core force at the entrance. "He's splitting his forces," Emily whispered. "Just as we hoped." Nakohe raised the obsidian mirror, reflecting a carefully timed pattern to warriors hidden among the rocks. Almost immediately, a controlled rock slide cascaded down, blocking the canyon entrance without harming any of Blackwood's men. The soldiers reacted with alarm, weapons drawn, suddenly realizing they might be trapped. Thomas remained calm, surveying the changed situation with calculated precision. He raised a hand, preventing his trigger-happy men from wasting ammunition on unseen targets. "Apache!" he called out, his cultured voice echoing off canyon walls. "I know you're watching. I propose a civilized conversation." Silence answered him. "I have 50 more men and 2 cannons arriving by tomorrow," he continued. "This can end with blood or with business. I'm a reasonable man." Emily couldn't suppress a bitter laugh. "Reasonable," she whispered. "That's what he called himself before he broke my arm for reading unauthorized books." Nakohe's expression darkened, but he maintained his focus on the scene below. Thomas dismounted, walking to the center of the canyon floor with theatrical confidence. "Emily, darling," he called out, "I know you can hear me. Come down and speak to your husband. I'm willing to be forgiving." Emily felt a chill despite the warm evening air. Even now, his voice triggered memories of carefully calibrated punishments disguised as discipline. "It's time," Nakohe said quietly. Emily nodded, taking a deep breath. She stood, making herself visible on the ridge. The obsidian mirror hung at her waist, catching the last rays of sunlight. Below, Thomas's face broke into a triumphant smile. "There's my wayward wife," he called up. "Come down, Emily, let's end this foolishness." "Hello, Thomas," she replied, her voice carrying clearly through the still canyon air. "I believe we have something to discuss." For the first time in their marriage, Emily looked down at her husband, both literally and figuratively. The black mirror at her side reflected his diminished figure, a fitting metaphor for how she now saw the man she had once feared above all else. Emily descended the rocky path toward the canyon floor, each step measured and deliberate. Behind her, hidden among the rocks, Apache warriors maintained a protective watch. Nakohi had objected to her meeting Thomas directly, but Emily had insisted this confrontation was necessary to buy time for the final phase of their plan. As she approached, Thomas's expression shifted from triumph to disapproval. "My God, Emily," he said, taking in her buckskin clothing and sun-darkened skin, "you've gone completely native." She stopped 10 paces from him, close enough for conversation but beyond his reach. Captain Reynolds and several armed men flanked Thomas, their hands resting on holstered weapons. "You look well, Thomas," she replied with calculated composure. "The desert air agrees with you." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Always the proper lady, even in savage attire. Come, it's time to return to civilization. I am precisely where I choose to be." Thomas's expression hardened. "You are my wife. You have no choices beyond those I permit." From a leather pouch at his waist, Thomas withdrew a small object and held it toward her, a worn wooden chess piece. A white queen, its ivory inlay cracked but still elegant. Emily's breath caught. The piece was from the chess set her father had taught her to play on, her one possession Thomas had allowed her to keep in their marriage. "I brought this to remind you of your proper place," Thomas said silkily. "The queen moves only to serve her king. It's the natural order." Emily recognized the psychological tactic. Thomas had always excelled at manipulating emotional attachments. The chess piece represented her carefully cultivated identity as the perfect, obedient wife. "How thoughtful," she replied evenly. "Though you seem to have forgotten that the queen is the most powerful piece on the board." Thomas's smile tightened. "Enough games. You have led me on quite a chase, but it ends now." He gestured broadly at the canyon. "Your Apache friends are outnumbered and outgunned. The only question is how many die before you see reason. Is that why you brought the army? To massacre people whose only crime was helping me?" Captain Reynolds stepped forward. "Mrs. Blackwood, we have orders to suppress hostile Indian activity. These Apache have attacked white settlers." "That's a lie," Emily said sharply. "We have sworn testimony," Reynolds countered. "And a witness." From behind, the soldiers emerged Takoda, no longer bound, but clearly under guard. His eyes couldn't meet Emily's. "Your witness is a traitor who sold his people for whiskey," Emily said. "And I suspect your settlers are Blackwood Railway employees trespassing on Apache land," Thomas laughed. "My dear, you've developed quite an imagination during your adventure. This land was designated for development by territorial decree." Emily removed the survey map from her pouch. "You mean this decree? The one that hasn't actually been signed yet? The one that requires government approval you haven't secured?" Thomas's face darkened as he recognized the document. "Where did you—" "Your advanced scouts were careless," Emily replied. "Just as you were careless in explaining your business affairs during dinner parties." "I may have been decorative, Thomas, but I was never deaf." A tense silence fell. Thomas's eyes darted to the canyon rim, where shadows moved among the rocks, Apache warriors taking positions. "Captain Reynolds," Thomas said quietly, "I believe we've confirmed hostile intent. Prepare your men." "Wait," Emily interjected. "I have a proposition." Thomas raised an eyebrow. "Unless it involves your immediate surrender, I'm not interested." "A wager," Emily continued. "Isn't that how gentlemen resolve disputes? You always prided yourself on being a gambling man." This caught Thomas's attention. "What kind of wager?" "One that prevents unnecessary bloodshed. One that gives you what you truly want, the railway route." Thomas studied her skeptically. "I'm listening." "An exchange," Emily proposed. "Me for the safe passage of the Apache from these lands. They relocate peacefully. You get your railway without the messy complications of a massacre that might attract federal scrutiny." Thomas laughed. "You overestimate your value, my dear. I can simply take what I want. Can you?" Emily gestured to the canyon rim. "Look around you, Thomas. Your men are surrounded, your escape blocked. You might win eventually, but at what cost? How many investors will back a project stained with a military scandal? Thomas's expression revealed she had struck a nerve. His railway venture required Eastern investors who were notably squeamish about indigenous conflicts. He rolled the chess queen between his fingers, considering, "And if I accept this exchange, you return willingly as my wife?" "I return," Emily confirmed, carefully avoiding the word wife. Before Thomas could respond, Captain Reynolds grabbed his arm. "Sir, movement on the ridge!" The battle erupted with stunning suddenness. Apache warriors launched a coordinated attack from multiple positions, arrows raining down with precision. Simultaneously, hidden explosives, powder kegs from the soldiers' own supplies, stolen and repositioned during the night, detonated at strategic points. Creating chaos and confusion, Thomas grabbed Emily's arm painfully. "You treacherous—" His words cut off as Nakohe seemed to materialize beside them, striking Thomas with enough force to separate him from Emily. The chess queen fell to the dust between them. "Run!" Nakohe commanded, engaging Thomas in hand-to-hand combat. Emily hesitated, unwilling to abandon him, but the battle was spreading across the canyon floor. Warriors executed the plan perfectly, targeting officers first, creating maximum confusion with minimal casualties. As Emily retreated toward their predetermined fallback position, she glanced back to see Thomas and Nakohe locked in visceral combat, the railroad barons, refined fighting style against the Apache leader's raw survival skills. Between them, in the dust, lay the White Queen. A chess piece, no longer a symbol of constraint, but of a game whose rules had fundamentally changed. Chaos engulfed the canyon floor. Gunfire echoed off stone walls as soldiers and mercenaries fought an enemy that seemed to materialize and vanish at will. The Apache executed their strategy perfectly, striking quickly, creating confusion. Avoiding direct confrontation with superior firearms, Emily reached the relative safety of a rocky outcropping where Nijoni waited with several children and elders. "Nakohe?" Nijoni asked urgently. "Fighting Thomas," Emily replied, catching her breath. The diversion worked. Half their forces followed the false trail to the western canyon. A terrified scream cut through the din of battle. Emily peered cautiously around the rocks to see a small Apache boy, no more than 6 years old, frozen in the open as bullets struck the ground around him. He had become separated from the evacuation group. Without hesitation, Emily darted from cover. Bullets kicked up dust at her feet as she reached the child, scooping him into her arms. A sharp pain exploded across her upper arm, a bullet graze, but she kept moving, returning the boy safely to Nijoni. "You bleed," Nijoni observed, quickly binding Emily's wound with a strip of cloth. "It's nothing," Emily replied, though the pain suggested otherwise. Below, the battle had reached a stalemate. The Apache warriors maintained strategic positions among the rocks, but Blackwood's men had regrouped around Thomas, who now bellowed orders from behind a defensive position of overturned wagons. Captain Reynolds lay wounded nearby, his uniform stained with blood. Emily's gaze sought Nakohe and found him coordinating the warriors from a ridge, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. Their eyes met briefly across the distance, a moment of connection amid chaos. The tide was turning, but not in their favor. Despite the Apache's tactical advantages, Blackwood's superior firepower was beginning to tell. Warriors fell back as ammunition dwindled and injuries mounted. Emily could see Thomas organizing a coordinated push that would eventually overwhelm them. "We need more time," she murmured, mind racing. The final phase of their plan, bringing the separated portions of Blackwood's force into conflict with each other, required at least another hour. A decision crystallized. Emily removed a small leather pouch from her belt. Inside was a small square of white linen, her handkerchief from her previous life, monogrammed with delicate embroidery. She had kept it as her last connection to civilization, tucked away, even as she embraced Apache ways. "Give this to Nakohe," she instructed Nijoni, pressing the handkerchief into her hands. "Tell him I'm sorry, but there is no other way." Before Nijoni could respond, Emily slipped away, working her way down toward the canyon floor through hidden crevices. She emerged on the opposite side from the Apache positions in full view of Thomas's men. "Thomas!" she called out, raising her hands. "Hold your fire! I surrender!" Rifles swung toward her immediately. Thomas emerged from behind the barricade, his normally immaculate appearance now disheveled, a bruise darkening his jaw where Nakohe had struck him. "Emily," he said, satisfaction evident in his voice. "Come to your senses at last?" "Stop this bloodshed," she replied, moving slowly toward him. "These people have suffered enough." Thomas signaled his men to hold their positions, but maintain aim at the Apache strongholds. "Their suffering is entirely optional. They merely need to disappear." Emily continued forward until she stood before him. "I'll return with you willingly. Sign a treaty guaranteeing this land remains Apache territory, and I'll be the perfect wife you always wanted." Thomas studied her, suspicion warring with triumph. "The perfect wife wouldn't have run in the first place." "I've learned my lesson," Emily replied, lowering her eyes submissively, a posture she had perfected during their marriage. "Freedom is an illusion that costs too much." From the rocks above, Emily heard Nakohe's voice call her name, anguish evident even at this distance. Thomas heard it too, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "Your savage protector objects," he observed. "How touching." Emily didn't respond, keeping her gaze downcast, playing the role Thomas expected. She had one chance to make this work. "Bind her," Thomas ordered a nearby mercenary. "Ensure she doesn't have another change of heart." As rough hands secured her wrists with rope, Emily caught sight of Nakohe being physically restrained by Tapua and another warrior. He had understood her intention immediately, and its potential cost. Thomas addressed his men. "Prepare to advance. Burn them out if necessary." "The treaty," Emily reminded him. "You promised." Thomas laughed. "My dear, I promised nothing. You offered terms I simply didn't reject." Emily had anticipated this betrayal. It was, after all, the cornerstone of her plan. "Then you leave me no choice but to reveal everything I know about your business practices to the territorial governor. The fraudulent land claims, the bribed officials, the misappropriated federal funds." Thomas's amusement vanished. "Empty threats from a desperate woman." "I kept records," Emily bluffed. "Hidden before I fled. My attorneys will release them if I don't return to stop them." This gave Thomas pause. Emily knew his investors had grown increasingly nervous about his methods. Even unfounded accusations could derail his financing. "You always underestimated me," Emily continued, "just as you underestimated these people." As if on cue, shouts erupted from the canyon entrance. The soldiers Thomas had sent on the false trail were returning, but under attack from behind by Apache warriors who had circled around to ambush them. Confusion spread through Thomas's ranks as friendly fire erupted, soldiers mistakenly shooting at each other in the chaos. The plan was working. They just needed a few more minutes of disarray. Emily's white handkerchief, now in Nakohe's possession, caught the sunlight as he raised it high, a signal to the warriors for the final phase of their attack. Despite her bound wrists and Thomas's bruising grip on her arm, Emily felt a sense of triumph. Her surrender wasn't a defeat, but a calculated sacrifice, a queen's gambit in their desperate game for survival. The canyon erupted into renewed chaos as Thomas's divided forces accidentally engaged each other. Soldiers returning from the false trail, under pressure from Apache warriors behind them, collided with Thomas's defensive position. In the confusion, friendly fire caused more casualties than Apache arrows. Thomas dragged Emily behind an overturned wagon, his composure finally fracturing. "This is your doing," he hissed, backhanding her with enough force to split her lip. Emily tasted blood but felt no fear, only a cold determination. "You've lost, Thomas. Accept it." His response was cut short as a mounted Apache warrior charged their position, forcing Thomas to release Emily and draw his revolver. He fired twice, missing the fast-moving target. The distraction gave Emily precious seconds to work at the ropes binding her wrists. Across the battlefield, Nakohe led a coordinated attack, using the confusion to devastating effect. The Apache moved like shadows among the rocks, striking and disappearing before soldiers could effectively respond. Emily felt the ropes loosen slightly. Thomas was occupied, shouting contradictory orders to his disorganized men. On the ground near her feet lay Thomas's sidearm, a beautifully crafted Remington Derringer with pearl grips and gold inlay. The small two-shot pistol was his backup weapon, fallen unnoticed from his coat during the commotion. With painful slowness, Emily maneuvered herself closer to the weapon, using the wagon for cover. Her fingers closed around the Derringer just as Thomas turned back to her. "Get up," he commanded, grabbing her arm roughly. "You're my ticket out of this death trap." He hauled her to her feet, using her as a human shield as he backed toward his horse. Emily kept the Derringer hidden in her palm, waiting for the right moment. "Cease fire!" Thomas shouted to his men. "I have Mrs. Blackwood." The battlefield stilled partially as soldiers registered their employer, using his wife as protection. The Apache warriors held their positions, awaiting Nakohe's command. Nakohe emerged from cover, bow lowered but ready. "Release her, Blackwood," Thomas laughed, pressing his revolver to Emily's temple. "I don't negotiate with savages." "Then negotiate with me," came a new voice. All eyes turned to the canyon entrance, where a man in a formal black suit stood flanked by uniformed men. Emily recognized him immediately. Judge William Hoffman, the territorial magistrate. A man even Thomas treated with deference. "Judge Hoffman," Thomas called out, confusion momentarily replacing his anger. "What brings you to this unfortunate situation?" "Telegrams concerning illegal military action against peaceful Apache bands," the judge replied, advancing cautiously. "And documents delivered to my office yesterday regarding fraudulent land claims." Emily felt Thomas stiffen behind her. This was unexpected. She hadn't known about any documents. The judge continued. "Release Mrs. Blackwood and surrender your weapons." "Mr. Blackwood, this operation has no legal sanction." Thomas's grip tightened painfully. "Impossible. I have orders." "Forgeries," Judge Hoffman interrupted. "Captain Reynolds has already confessed to accepting bribes to provide military support without proper authorization." Emily saw the wounded Captain Reynolds being tended by a military doctor, his face ashen with more than pain. Thomas's control was slipping. "This is absurd. These Apache attacked my survey team after your men trespassed on their legally recognized territory," the judge countered. "The Treaty of 1868 is quite clear on these boundaries." Emily felt Thomas's resolve hardening. His voice dropped to a whisper only she could hear. "This changes nothing. You're still mine to discipline as I see fit." In that moment, Emily knew Thomas would never release her willingly. Even cornered, his sense of ownership remained unshakable. She tensed, preparing to use the Derringer when a blur of movement caught her eye. Nakohe had closed half the distance between them, with silent speed. Thomas swung his revolver toward this new threat. "No!" Emily cried, driving her elbow hard into Thomas's ribs. The momentary distraction was all Nakohe needed. He launched himself forward as Thomas's revolver discharged, the bullet grazing Nakohe's shoulder. They collided violently, tumbling to the ground in a desperate struggle for the weapon. Emily, hands still partially bound, watched in horror as Thomas gained the upper hand. Using his greater weight to pin Nakohe, the revolver, lost in their struggle, lay just beyond reach of either man. Thomas reached for his boot, drawing a hidden knife. "I'll gut you like the animal you are," he snarled. Emily raised the Derringer with trembling hands. "Thomas, stop!" He turned, surprise registering at the sight of his own weapon in his wife's hands. His surprise quickly transformed into contempt. "You won't use that," he said dismissively. "You haven't the courage." Emily's hands steadied. "You never knew me at all, Thomas." The Derringer's report was deafening in the sudden silence. Thomas jerked backward, his expression one of disbelief rather than pain. He looked down at the spreading crimson stain on his immaculate waistcoat. "You shot me," he said, sounding more bewildered than angry. "You left me no choice," Emily replied, her voice steady despite the trembling that had overtaken her body. Thomas staggered to his feet, knife still clutched in his hand. Rather than surrender, he lunged toward Emily in a final act of rage. The second shot never came. Instead, Nakohe intercepted Thomas's charge, deflecting the knife and delivering a devastating blow that sent Thomas crashing to the ground. This time he didn't rise. Judge Hoffman hurried forward, accompanied by his men. "Mrs. Blackwood, are you harmed?" Emily stared at the derringer in her hand. The elegant weapon that had been a symbol of Thomas's power now transformed into the instrument of her liberation. "It's Morgan," she corrected quietly, letting the pearl-handled pistol fall from her grasp. "My name is Emily Morgan." Dusk settled over the canyon, painting the stone walls in shades of amber and purple. The sounds of battle had given way to the quieter business of tending wounds and mourning losses. Thomas Blackwood lay unconscious in a military wagon, his wound serious but not immediately fatal. Judge Hoffman had ordered him transported to the territorial capital to face charges of fraud, bribery, and illegal military action. Emily sat alone on a rock outcropping, watching as Apache women prepared burial rituals for their fallen warriors. 4 had died in the battle, a grievous loss for the small band. The tribe's grief was palpable yet dignified. No wailing or dramatic displays, just a profound, communal sorrow that seemed to permeate the very air. Makawee approached slowly, her ancient frame somehow unbowed by the day's events. In her gnarled hands, she carried a small earthen bowl filled with a pungent-smelling paste, a mixture of medicinal herbs crushed into animal fat. "For healing," she explained, gesturing to Emily's injured arm where the bullet had grazed her. Emily nodded gratefully, allowing the elder to remove the makeshift bandage. The wound stung sharply as Makawee applied the medicine with practiced movements. "The flesh remembers," Makawee said cryptically, her fingers gentle despite their roughness. "But it also forgets." Emily understood she wasn't speaking merely of physical wounds. "Does it forget?" "With time, with purpose." Makawee worked the medicine deeper. "The body is wiser than the mind." As Makawee finished rebinding the wound, Emily noticed Judge Hoffman speaking with Nakohe near the center of the canyon. Their conversation appeared intense, but not adversarial. Several official-looking documents passed between them. "What will happen now?" Emily asked. Makawee followed her gaze. "The paper chief brings good words. The high canyon will remain Apache land, and Blackwood Railway. The Iron Road will find another path," Makawee replied. "Around our territory, not through it." Emily felt a weight lifting, one victory secured amid so much loss. "I'm glad." Makawee placed the medicine bowl beside Emily. "Keep this. You will need it in days to come." Before Emily could respond, Nijoni approached, her normally stoic expression softened by exhaustion. She carried a bundle wrapped in soft deerskin. "We found this among the soldier chief's things," she said, carefully unfolding the bundle to reveal its contents. Emily gasped softly. Inside lay her mother's journal, Catherine's original journal that Nakohe had believed lost forever. Its leather cover was scuffed but intact, the pages yellowed but preserved. "Thomas had it all along," Emily whispered, touching the journal reverently. "He must have found it after Mother's death." Nijoni nodded. "The soldier chief, Reynolds, said Blackwood kept it as insurance against Apache claims to this land. He knew the journal contained evidence of broken treaties. The journal represented everything: her mother's connection to the Apache, the proof of their legal rights to the land, the foundation of Nakohe's promise to protect her. That Thomas had hoarded it as a weapon rather than destroyed it seemed a final, unintentional gift from her controlling husband. Emily opened the journal carefully, finding the familiar handwriting that had guided her childhood. Catherine's detailed accounts of Apache medicine, culture, and history filled pages interspersed with legal observations and personal reflections. She was building a case, Emily realized, scanning entries, documenting everything to challenge the government's treatment of the Apache. "A woman of vision," Makawee agreed. "Like her daughter." Emily continued turning pages until she reached one that made her breath catch, a charcoal sketch of a younger Nakohe. Catherine had captured his essence perfectly, the quiet strength, the watchful eyes. Beside it, a simple notation: Joseph Nakohe, my most promising student and trusted friend. Understanding bloomed within Emily. Catherine had been more than an observer or ally. She had been deeply connected to these people, to Nakohe specifically. The journal wasn't just documentation. It was a record of profound human connection across seemingly impermeable boundaries. As evening deepened into night, Emily found Nakohe standing apart from the tribe, watching the stars emerge. His wounds had been treated, but weariness etched deep lines around his eyes. "Judge Hoffman is a man of honor," he said as she approached. "He will enforce the treaty boundaries." "What of the tribe?" Emily asked. "Will you stay in the High Canyon?"
For now.
"Until the wounded heal. Then we return to our usual territories." Emily held out the journal. "She would want you to have this." Nakohe took it carefully, his fingers tracing the cover. "Catherine's words belong with her daughter." "We could share it," Emily suggested. "There's wisdom here for both our paths." Something shifted in Nakohe's expression, a softening, a question. "You speak as though your path continues here, doesn't it?" Emily asked simply. The journal rested between them, a bridge connecting past to present, culture to culture, loss to possibility. Whatever grew between them now would be rooted in this shared inheritance. This unexpected legacy from a woman who had refused to accept the boundaries of her time. Around them, the tribe continued its rituals of healing and mourning. Judge Hoffman and his men prepared to depart with their prisoners. The medicine bowl Makawi had left emitted its pungent, earthy scent, a reminder that healing, though painful, was already underway. 6 months passed. The high desert bloomed with unexpected spring flowers, painting the normally austere landscape with splashes of yellow and purple. The Apache tribe had returned to their traditional hunting grounds, now legally protected by territorial decree. Thomas Blackwood faced trial in the territorial capital, his business empire crumbling as investors abandoned him and evidence of corruption mounted. Emily stood at the entrance of her lodge, watching children play in the central clearing. Her buckskin dress, once an unfamiliar costume, now felt as natural as breathing. The bullet wound on her arm had healed, leaving only a slight silver scar, one of many marks, visible and invisible, that told the story of her transformation. Makawi approached, carrying something wrapped in a bundle of soft rabbit fur. "It is finished," the old woman announced, her voice betraying rare emotion. She carefully unfolded the fur to reveal a wedding blanket of exceptional craftsmanship. The primary design featured interwoven thunderbirds and morning stars, symbols of power and new beginnings, rendered in vibrant colors against a deep blue background. Along the edges ran a delicate pattern that, upon closer inspection, incorporated both Apache symbols and subtle motifs from European needlework. "Makawi," Emily breathed, touching the exquisite textile with reverent fingers. "I have no words. A blanket to bind 2 lives," Makawi explained. "As is our way." The wedding blanket represented months of work, with every woman in the tribe contributing to its creation. Emily recognized Njoni's distinctive beadwork along one border, and Makawi's intricate weaving throughout. Even young girls had added stitches, making it truly a community creation. "I am not worthy of such a gift," Emily said softly. "The blanket decides who is worthy," Makawi replied with characteristic wisdom. "It has chosen you as he has chosen you." Emily's gaze drifted to where Nakohe stood with the tribal hunters, planning the day's expedition. In the months following the battle, their connection had deepened through shared work, quiet conversations, and gradual understanding. Nothing had been rushed or forced. The tribe had its ways, its proper timing. "The ceremony will be at tomorrow's sunset," Makawi continued. "When father-son embraces Mother Earth," Emily nodded, emotion tightening her throat. 6 months ago, she had been a desperate fugitive. Now she stood on the threshold of a life she could never have imagined in her previous existence. Later that evening, as twilight settled over the camp, Emily found Nakohe at his favorite outlook point above the village. He acknowledged her arrival with a slight nod, his expression thoughtful rather than troubled. "I received word from Judge Hoffman today," he said. "The territorial governor has signed the permanent treaty. Our lands are secure." "That's wonderful news," Emily replied, genuine relief in her voice. "And Blackwood has been sentenced to 15 years for corruption and fraud." Nakohe turned to face her fully. "You are legally free. Your marriage dissolved by territorial decree." Emily absorbed this information. "I was free the moment I left him," she said simply. "The law is just catching up." A comfortable silence settled between them. In the distance, an owl called, receiving an answering hoot from across the valley. "Makawi showed me the wedding blanket," Emily said finally. "Are you certain this is what you want?" Nakohe asked, his voice carefully neutral. "You could return to your world now. Nothing holds you here against your will." Emily considered her response carefully. "When I first came here, I was running away from something. Now I would be running towards something." She met his gaze directly. "There's a difference. Your mother wrote of belonging," Nakohe said, referencing Catherine's journal that they had read together over the winter months. "She believed hearts could find home in unexpected places." "She was wiser than anyone knew," Emily replied. The next evening, as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, the tribe gathered in a semicircle at the ceremonial grounds. Emily emerged from Makawi's lodge, her hair adorned with small white flowers, her dress a new creation of soft buckskin, decorated with intricate beadwork. Nakohe waited at the center of the gathering, standing tall in his finest attire, a chief's regalia worn only for the most significant occasions. His expression, normally guarded, softened visibly when he saw her. The ceremony blended traditions. Whitehawk conducted the Apache rituals, speaking of union not just between two people, but between families, clans, and worlds. Emily had prepared small gifts for every tribal member, following custom. Nakohe presented her with his most prized possession, his father's flute, symbolizing both continuity and new music to be created. When Makawi brought forward the wedding blanket, a murmur of appreciation moved through the gathered tribe. With ceremonial dignity, she draped it around both their shoulders, physically binding them together beneath its protective embrace. "Two paths, now one," Nakohe said quietly, the traditional words carrying across the hushed gathering. "Two worlds, now one," Emily responded, completing the phrase. As the blanket settled around them, its weight, both tangible and symbolic, Emily felt the final pieces of her journey clicking into place. The desperate woman who had sobbed, "I'm not safe here," in the Badlands months ago, had found not just safety, but belonging. Above them, the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, the same stars her mother had told her connected all people across all distances. Catherine had built the first bridge between these worlds. Now Emily and Nakohe would strengthen it, honoring the past while creating something entirely new. Under the shared warmth of the wedding blanket, two hands joined, a simple gesture containing worlds of meaning.